Morning, Year 9. Welcome to this lesson on doors and symbolism in the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Um, Doors have considerable symbolic significance in this book, and today we'll look at quotes about doors in Stevenson's chilling novella and learn how they highlight symbolism in the narrative. So let's get started then. So we're just going to do a quick review about doors and their symbolism from the lesson that we've done a few weeks ago on this as well. So doors have powerful symbolic potential in literature, drama and film, particularly within the horror and fantasy genres. Doors can be opened to grant access or opportunity to something or someone, but they can also be used protectively and secretly to keep something or someone out. In this text, doors represent good and evil, points of access and barriers, and symbols of character. So this is the first thing I'd like you to do for our Do Now activity. So just think about what you can remember from our previous lesson on windows and doors and just write a couple of sentences based on what you can already remember. So you might like to pause the video to do that, and then as soon as you come back we can move on. So now let's look at Dr. Jekyll's door. So we're going to look at some analysis and some key quotes for this. So Dr. Jekyll's door can be thought of as both a point of access to and a representation of his character. Jekyll is a well-respected and successful doctor in London, and his front door reflects this. The novel's narrator tells us that the doctor's home is part of a square of ancient handsome houses, and that its door wears a great air of wealth and comfort. Beyond the door is a large, low-roofed, comfortable hall paved with flags, warmed by a bright open fire and furnished with costly cabinets of oak. Mr. Utterson, Jekyll's attorney and friend, describes the hall behind the door as the pleasantest room in London. So what could that make us think about the character Jekyll? How does he come across to other people if his door is described in this manner? So like his door, Jekyll is a well-made, smooth-faced man of 50, with something of a stylish cast, and every mark of capacity and kindness. Jekyll's door is also both a point of access and a barrier to Utterson, and has been controlled for 20 years by his servant, Poole. At the beginning and middle of the novel, Poole invites Utterson into the house to see Jekyll, but at times, in between, Utterson is mysteriously denied admittance. Okay, so let's move on to Mr. Hyde's door then. You might already be thinking about what Mr. Hyde's door could look like if it's going to reflect his character. As you can see from this image, you might be able to guess. So Mr. Hyde's door as well can be read as a point of access to and representation of his character. It's a symbol of insidious intrigue. Utterson first introduced to the door in conversation with his friend Mr. Enfield, who calls the building it belongs to as Blackmail House. He tells Utterson how he once saw Hyde trample a little girl in the street, then entering this building with a key to get a checkbook so he could pay the girl's family to keep quiet about it. Unlike Jekyll's home, Hyde's is a sinister block of building thrust forward on the street. It is 2 stories high, shows no window, nothing but a door on the lower story, and a blind forehead of discoloured wall on the upper. It shows the marks of prolonged and sordid negligence. Its door is blistered and disdained, a shelter for tramps and street urchins. So I'm just going to put this question out there. So what can we already draw from Hyde's character based on the description of his door? If you can answer that question and write it down for me, that would be brilliant. Okay, so in contrast to Jekyll, Hyde, like his door, inspires revulsion in everyone he meets. He is pale and dwarfish and troglodytic, which is another word for caveman-like. He also gives a strange impression of deformity without any nameable malformation, and has a displeasing smile. Hyde's door is also both a point of access and a barrier to Utterson. Hyde is anxious not to reveal too much about himself, and he quickly disappears through the door, practically shutting it in Utterson's face. Later, however, Utterson is permitted to enter the house by an unnamed old woman, presumably a servant. She has an evil face smoothed by hypocrisy, and expresses odious joy that Hyde may be in trouble with the law. This time, the door allows him access to evidence that Hyde is the murderer of Sir Danvers Carow. Interesting. So, this is a new word for us, and I love this word. I think it's such a cool word. So, could you write this down for me? Just an answer to this question here. So, how could the word troglodytic link to last lesson's analysis of Darwin and degeneration? If you're really going for it, you could structure this as a PEE paragraph or a piece paragraph. So just some analysis of that word, linking that to last lesson. So pause the video if you need to in order to answer this question. And this photo might give you some inspiration. Fantastic. Let's move on then to the Jekyll/Hyde cabinet door. So, a third major door in the novella is Jekyll's cabinet door, which is located in his laboratory. In Victorian England, this type of cabinet wasn't a cupboard or closet, but rather a private room. The narrator tells us that this door is covered with red baize, a felt-like fabric like that used on pool tables. It leads to a large room fitted round with glass presses, which is cupboards, that is comfortably furnished with a floor-length mirror, table, fireplace, and a lamp. This room is where, as we eventually learn, Jekyll imbibes or drinks or consumes the chemical formula that changes him into Hyde, and vice versa. Despite its cosy furnishings, this is the room where Jekyll and Hyde endure the physically painful and spiritually tormented process of transfiguration. Its purpose is radically divided between comfort and discomfort, agony and relief. So that's another example of duality in the novel as well. Thus, the cabinet door represents both the good and evil sides of his character, or its duality, as well as the notion of transformation. Utterson is granted access to this room, which we're going to look at on the next slide, actually. Hang on. Okay, so Utterson and the cabinet. So Utterson is granted access to this room at the beginning of the novella by Jekyll, but is barred from it for a long period of time as Jekyll becomes increasingly reclusive. In the middle of the narrative, a desperately worried Poole grants Utterson access to Jekyll through the front door of the house. But even Poole doesn't have the key to the door of the cabinet Jekyll is hiding in. So as you can see, I've put that in inverted commas. Don't know whether you can get the pun there, but that would be a pun. Instead, Utterson and Poole have to break the door down with an axe. Here we can see the cabinet door as representing Jekyll's extreme resistance to sharing his chilling secret. He kills himself in the locked cabinet. Which makes it more difficult for Utterson to get to the bottom of the mystery. Okay, so I'm going to give you a mini quiz now based on what we've just learnt. So, it's multiple choice, and it's just to see whether you've understood today's new knowledge. So, could you please answer these questions? And then I can give you the answers after you've completed it. So once you've done that, we can then move on to our review or lesson summary. Okay, so we've learned that in the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, doors represent both good and evil, as well as points of access and barriers. They are also reflections of the characters of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The front door to Jekyll's home, like his character, is described in wholesome, desirable terms. Conversely, the door to Hyde's hideout, like Hyde himself, is described in sinister, undesirable terms. Finally, the door to Jekyll's laboratory cabinet can be read as symbolising the duality of his good and evil nature, as well as transformation. Its purpose is split between agony and relief. All three doors alternate between functioning as points of access and barriers to the characters behind them, for Utterson as he struggles to solve the mystery of Jekyll's strange affliction. Okay, so we've gone into that symbolism of doors in a lot of detail now. Over, I think, 2 lessons we did this for. So write down 3 things that you've learnt from this lesson. And we are not going to look at doors until you start in year 10. So make sure you understand this. Fantastic. Thank you so much for listening today, year 9. Let me know if you've got any questions. You can comment below and like this video if you would. Thank you.